Today we are going through the topic electrophysiology of the heart. So let's begin. Here on this slide, the electrical activity of the heart has been shown with the fibers that are drawn in the blue. These are the fibers that can generate and conduct the electrical activity of the heart. So in a way we cannot see exactly how exactly the electrical activity is going on in this diagram, but what we can understand through this diagram is that there are different structures present in the heart itself that can generate and conduct the electrical impulse. Let's have a look at this here. It has been said that heart is composed of three major types of cardiac muscle. The atrial and ventricular muscle forms the one unit, that is one type. Then there is another type which can be put together as the specialized excitatory fibers and conductive muscle fibers, though they are separated to be shown here as three different structures. The heart basically constitutes of two different types of cells, and 99% of the cells are contractile in their properties, whereas the cells that can generate the impulse, electrical impulse, also can conduct these impulse, are said to be as autorhythmic cells or conducting cells. And in this diagram, the blue structures are the structures that are basically responsible for the generation and conduction of the electrical impulse. So we can understand that 1% of the cells are the ones that can generate and conduct the electrical impulse, whereas bulk of the heart is made of the contractile cells. Now we go on to the next slide. Here it has been again emphasized about the two types of the tissues in the heart, and they are namely the contractile cells and conducting cells. We should understand that conducting cells cannot generate the force, whereas contractile cells can generate the electrical impulse, cannot generate the electrical impulse but can generate the force because they undergo the mechanical contraction, and these are the 99% of the cells, what we see as the contractile. The electrical properties of the cardiac muscle in fact are threefold: that's automaticity, rhythmicity, and conductivity. Mechanical property of the cardiac muscle in fact is the contractility, and this contractility is the property for the atrial and ventricular musculature. And since both the atria can contract as a unit, and that's named as atrial syncytium, similarly ventricular musculature can undergo contraction, and that they are named as the syncytium, because both left and right ventricle contract as unit, and hence there are two syncytium, the atrial syncytium and ventricular syncytium. And this is also possible because the electrical impulse could straight away pass from the atria to the ventricle if they were not separated by in between the fibrous or the connective tissue. So we should understand that these two syncytium are separated apart by the skeleton of the heart, and that skeleton is seen like this here, as shown here in this diagram. This is known as fibrous skeleton of the heart. In fact, it has been shown here that these four different valves, they all lie in the same plane, and these valves in fact are the ones they are tied together by the connective tissue known as the fibrous rings, and these fibrous rings is the one that do not allow the impulse to travel from the atria to the ventricle, and that's known as fibrocutaneous ring, right? So this ring cannot conduct the cardiac impulse, and this is the reason why, as shown earlier in this diagram, you can see that these yellow structure tissues are the only one that can conduct the impulse, and straight away from the atria to the ventricle, the syncytium cannot conduct impulse to each other. If they do so, then that's not physiological function in the heart. So what are the structures that are present as the 1% of the tissue, what we say as the autorhythmic cells or conducting cells? They are named as tissues known as the SA node, atrial internodal tracts, AV node, bundle of His, and the Purkinje system. You can see here in the right atrium, the blue structure is the SA node here, then comes the AV node down below, then the bundle of His, then this bundle of His can be separated into two different parts known as the left bundle branch and the right bundle branch. The left and right bundle branch are again said to be forming the Purkinje fibers, which innervates the entire ventricular musculature. These Purkinje fibers in fact conduct the impulse towards the endocardium of the ventricle. Now we should be very clear that the conducting cells do not contribute to generation of force, and they are the ones they in fact generate action potentials and rapidly spread action potentials. The SA node, on the other hand, we see that the sinoatrial node, they are the ellipsoid cells located at the junction of the superior vena cava with the right atrium. The SA nodal fibers connect directly with the atrial muscle fibers so that the action potentials spread directly to the atria. However, we have seen that there are the tracts known as atrial internodal tracts, but for these right atrial musculature, the impulse can be transmitted from the SA node straight to their atrial cardiac tissues. The SA node is innervated by right vagus and AV node by the left vagus, and both these nodes are also innervated by the sympathetic nerves, and it is also known that the generation of action potentials occurs through the same very mechanism in both the nodes, that is SA node and AV node. Now this picture shows there are three different types of the internodal tract known as anterior, middle, and the posterior internodal tract emerging from the SA node and innervating to the AV node, crisscrossing through the atrial musculature. So these internodal tracts are also known as anterior as batsman, the middle as the wingback, and posterior internodal tract as tract of Thorel. But we should remind ourselves that the excitation spreads through atrial cardiac muscle fibers also, and we need not always say that these three internodal tracts can only transmit the impulse from the SA node to the atria. Rather, the SA node impulse can transmit through these tracts to the AV node for the appropriate spread of the action potentials once generated in the SA node, but spread of the excitation into the atrial muscles can happen straight away from the SA node to these atrial cardiac musculature, independent of these tracts. So these are the conducting system in the heart: SA node, AV node, bundle of His, and Purkinje fibers, here as shown here in this diagram. The yellow structure here shown is the excitation that has occurred into the atrial syncytium. After these arrows, or after this initiation of the impulse from the SC node, as shown by those 4 yellow arrows.